So right now we're living through one of the most dangerous and unstable times in history. It's not just happening in one or two countries, it's happening all around the world. And I need to talk to you guys about this stuff. I'll have a lot of things to say. I want to hear what you have to say in the community. But this is what's going on. Just today, looks like the French government's just collapsed. Right now, there's a vote of no confidence. They're going to try to form a new government, new coalition to get things going again. But perfectly frank, it's not going to be easy. You have instability here in Korea, as you guys know. That's where I'm at, where the president tried to throw a military coup to, take over, arrest the opposition, that kind of thing. It is just a really awful time. And the craziest thing is, we talk about the markets all the time. The U.S. market's going up because, like, when there's instability around the world, at least you can depend on USA, right? Well, Donald Trump is coming into office in January, which is the most Trump, that is the most unstable president in U.S. history. You could argue the worst president in U.S. history. And, he's picking people to be on his team are completely unqualified. You put that together with the things that are happening around the world, it's just not a stable time right now. I'm hoping we can come out of this, but if you're looking for US leadership and you're looking for Donald Trump to lead this out, and then on top of that, you have Elon Musk spreading his misinformation and all the things that he wants to do to enrich himself, essentially. That's why I'm saying it's a dangerous time. Regarding the situation in France, the basic gist of it is there's not enough money. It's the same situation here in Korea. There's just not enough money. And so in France, what they were trying to do, and just imagine how unpopular this would be. If you guys, we just don't have enough money to run our government. This is what we need to do. We need to cut your benefits, cut services, and we need to raise taxes. Yeah, exactly. It would not be popular anywhere in the world, right? No one ever says that. Hey, we need to raise your taxes and cut your, But the reality is, if you are deficit spending, I think they're looking at 6% GDP. Deficit spending. USA is roughly the same kind of numbers of deficit spending. The national debts keeps going up. France is going to be more worse situation than USA because in France you got basically no growth over there. It's a problem, the same problem in many countries in Europe, no growth. The other issue as well is you have this sort of rising sentiment of anti-immigrant, culture. Basically, then this is when a nationalist leader will rise up and say, guys, all the problems are just because of the outsiders. It's all their fault, right? We got to kick them out and we'll be back together. We got to take care of our own people, which from, historical point of view, you understand why that message is appealing. That's essentially Donald Trump's message. It's appealing because it doesn't feel like there's enough money to go around. People start complaining about the budgets of, oh, you guys are spending too much on this, you spend too much on that. Why don't I have a job, etc. I want to read something for you. This is actually coming from just history, Wikipedia on the French Revolution. And I want you just to listen to it and sort of how it relates to what we're going on today. And I'll explain. So let's listen to this. So this is on France. Between 1715, a long time ago, right? But just listen, the history repeats itself. Between 1715 and 1789, the French population grew from 21 to 28 million. So 20% of whom lived in towns and cities. So basically they're experiencing population growth, right? So that's actually a big move from 21 to 28 million. Paris alone having over 600,000 inhabitants. This was accompanied by a tripling in the size of the middle class, right? So things are definitely changing. They're becoming more prosperous, but the middle class at that time was 10% of the population by 1789. So it wasn't like everybody was middle class. It was still a relatively small proportion. It says here, despite increase in overall prosperity, meaning even though everyone's getting lifted up, its benefits were largely restricted to the rentier and mercantile classes. So, just the landowners and the business people were making money, and those are the ones high up. And here's the other part. While the living standards fell, right, living standards were going down for wage laborers, right, people hourly wage, and peasant farmers who rented their land. You guys hear like these parallels that we have? So you have, massive change happening in the country. This is in France, like a long time ago, hundreds of years ago. The population increasing. Yes, you do have an increase in middle class and more wealth, but not everybody, right? And then the large group of people are not experiencing parts of that. Also says here, this is where it also relates, again, from French history. Economic recession from 1785 combined with bad harvest. So, the bad harvest situation, like there's just not enough food. You could argue, for the USA, like, hey, we just went through this crazy pandemic where everything shut down, things like that, right? So there's you have sort of the change in wealth. You have the disparity between rich and poor, which I keep saying is a major problem around the world. And then you just have sort of like a world event that spurs, even more economic turmoil. In this situation, it's like a bad harvest, right? There's not enough food. Combined with bad harvests in 1787 and 1788, led to high unemployment and food prices, right? Are causing a financial and political crisis. So basically, like high unemployment, higher food prices, right? People losing their jobs, high inflation, price things are going up. It's interesting this is how you learn from history. Like, oh my God, we've seen this kind of situations before, right? That's why I asked you guys, does this sound familiar? Listen, there's more. This is coming from French history hundreds of years ago. The spurs of the French Revolution. It says, while the state also experienced a debt crisis, the level of debt itself was not high compared to with Britain's. Oh my God. If you look what was bad in France, look what the heck was going on in Britain. And it's funny, it's a very similar situation to what we're seeing today. And I was just looking through this stuff, and then it said, hey, the significant problem was that the tax rates. You got to figure out, it's unfair. Like it says here, a significant problem was the tax rates varied widely from one region to another, were often different from the official amounts, and collected inconsistently. So basically, there's a bunch of corruption with I'm laughing because it's like, just think about how we think about the system today. We're like, hey, why is this person's taxes different than my taxes? Or there's corruption. Why are you collecting taxes inconsistently? It's just completely unfair. Which we talked about before in the channel. Let's say someone like Elon Musk can completely game the system, not take any salary from Tesla, get all his, essentially wealth built in stock and stock options, and then borrow money based on those assets, right? And then the assets are like, going up and down because of the stock market. And the stock market, say right now in modernity, is all based on hype, and it's basically a modern day Ponzi. Then you have our currency, which is the modern economic theory. It's not really tied to gold anymore. It's just like, hey, we can print whenever we like. People are like, yo, I'm pushing back against that modern economic theory stuff, and I'm going to make my own digital coins. Oh yeah, dog coins. Yes, doggy coins are going to save us. And that's the period we're going into. And then now we're looking to the USA for leadership, and we got Donald Trump with his circus coming to, quote, save the day. And that's what I'm saying, guys. It's a crazy time. I was looking at some of the other stuff going on as well. Just want to give you a sense of like, what else is happening, why it's so unstable. This is another headline: Russian ship fires warning shots at German helicopter in the Baltic Sea. Okay, great. Now we got the Russians shooting at the Germans. The other issue as well is we have the situation in the Middle East, as you guys with Gaza. We have the war with Russia and Ukraine. Countries in Europe, they're having financial difficulties, same way is in the USA. And so I'll just be perfectly honest with you. I think that the situation in Ukraine is going to be really tough against Russia. I honestly, with war, I don't think anyone wins. I want to make that really clear. I don't think anyone really wins. The Russian people are suffering. The Ukrainian people are suffering. The people around the world are like, I don't want to put more money into this thing. And we're all blaming each other for the problems, but it boils down to, well, let's talk about France or England or the USA or here in Korea. The problems all relate to roughly the same. What is the core key problem that we're all facing? We have people that is a larger population of elderly people, and they need pensions, right? That's part of our system. They paid into the system. They should, have right to their pension, healthcare, this kind of stuff. We don't have enough workers to support the system. It's like a upside down, triangle, upside down pyramid. And you can argue, oh, the whole economic system is a pyramid scheme, right? You could argue that, but that's the fundamental core, right? You also have slowing down of growth rates around the world. There's just only so much that you can grow. That's why I said you have to understand this in world history and understand it's not just happening in your just one country, in your neck of the woods. It's happening everywhere. A simple example, guys. We'll use the example of U.S. history for those who are Americans. Let's say, we're talking about colonial period, and I grew up in Oregon, and there's a popular video game everyone used to play called the Oregon Trail. If you guys know this game, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But the basic gist of it is like, the settlers are moving out west. And guys, I want to make sure really clear in our history, yes, there were Native Americans. And yes, the Europeans took the land from another group of people, which is a different part of our history, which I don't want to get into entirely, but I want to acknowledge that it's completely true. And it's important to bring up. But during this period, let's make it clear. There are some people who are clearly losers. That was the Native Americans, right? And I don't think it's funny at all. I never make jokes about that stuff. I think it's something we should talk about. So I always bring it up now. But at that period too, there was a bunch of people getting wealthy, and like say the California gold rush. more people like, going up to Oregon, and they're heading out west because there's all this opportunity. There's like, oh my God, there's all these new cities popping up. Look how crazy, and everyone's getting rich, right? And look all the money to be made. Or that periods, you can talk about, hey, it's the Wild West now, and we got to protect ourselves, protect our wealth. So we all run around and carry guns. And if you don't like me, I'm gonna, challenge you at noon. Right? I just want to get a sense of like things are different back then. There's more opportunities for growth, right? New technology being developed, etc. In today's period, right? If you don't want to understand the markets and our economic system, where do we find the growth? Where do we find opportunity to build, wealth and get business going, et cetera? What if, and here's the problem we are at right now, what if our whole system's based on debt, right? The idea is that well, it's based on a couple things. I take my money, I give it to the bank, right? And you bank, you keep my money, and I come back, and if I want to get some, give a little bit more money back to me, right? So interest. The bank, how do they make money? They loan it out to other people, right? They give it out to another person. The person's like, okay, bank, I got this proposal for you. I'm going to make this business. I'm going to have this, space age lemonade stand, basically. And the bank says, okay, I'll give you the money. You can go build your lemonade stand, but I'm going to charge you interest. And banks make money because there's a difference, right? There's a spread between how much they are paying someone on interest to hold someone's money, and someone they collect the interest on how much they lend out, right? But remember, it's like someone's giving them money and then they're lending it out. And in many situations, the banks, like, they want to just lend out as much as they possibly can. And then you got these other people saying, okay, I got this loan from the bank, I got this new business, this lemonade stand, and then they borrow money on assets based on lemonade stand, and they can inflate the said assets, and they can repeat the process over and over. I'm kind of simplifying things, but I want you to understand, like, our whole system is based on hype, it's based on debt, it's based on the expectations that the economies will continue to grow to an infinity, right? And then, so like on the channel, what I show you guys all the time when we talk about it, like, you can just sit down and look at numbers, like, okay, is there really growth? Is it really worth investing in certain companies, right? When for example, if someone said, hey, I'm talking about Musk and Tesla, hey, I think the growth's going to be in robots, humanoid robots. We're all going to have a robot in our house. And Musk is like, yeah, in 10 years, there's going to be more humanoid robots than humans on the planet. Like, then we're not talking about basically nonsense, right? We're talking about nonsense. We're not talking about reality anymore. Or Musk is like, hey, we're going to go to the Mars, right? So the whole hypiness is trying to like pump you up on where the next growth is going to be. Put that all together with what's happening around the world when people are like, dude, I can't even afford to buy oranges or bananas or apples in my neck of the woods. I just lost my job, right? I'm worried the government's going to cut my retirement, and the rents are still elevated, right? Because this whole world is based on this like infinite growth. It's based on debt, right? What if too, if like you run companies that were based on trade, which a lot of companies are, a lot of small businesses in USA are based on trade, right? You expect to import goods coming in from other countries. The idea of how you make your money, basically, hey, I buy things cheap in China. It's basically what it is, like a factory in China, Vietnam, Indonesia, whatever. I get those products in, I maybe assemble them in USA, and I sell them at a profit, right? That's your whole business model. Then you have someone like Trump coming in and say, hey, I'm going to raise tariffs. We're going to protect America. We want to go back to where we're a manufacturing country again, which is kind of nuts. It doesn't really make sense historically, which is a whole other issues, right? He just like wants to roll back the clock when things were, quote, better in USA, but better for who, right? Better for who? Was it better for minorities back, 50 years ago? Was it better for women back, say, 50 years ago? Was it better for workers, right? I would argue at any periods of time, say, look at French history. Yeah, it's definitely better for the mercantile class. And yes, during U.S. history, if you want to look at like booms and busts after World War II, USA came out the winners. Essentially, all the factories were intact. We start building the other places around the world. You had the Marshall Plan, start selling products to everyone else, right? And then everyone's in debt to the USA. But that growth starts to slow down as other countries catch up. I told you guys here in Korea, we're booming like crazy for a while, crazy growth period, building up new companies, etc. Now Korea is kind of the shining light on the hill, you could call it, where many countries want to be like Korea. Some countries actually want to be like China, depending if you want to be economic growth with authoritarian political system, etc. And then on top of that, you got Musk spreading out misinformation about all kinds of stuff, blaming, anyone he wants to blame. If he wants to blame cats and dogs, one day he'll blame, parrots, another day, whatever, birds aren't real. And I know I make jokes about this kind of stuff, and I know I'm giving you kind of a longer rundown spiel of what's going on in the world, but this whole system right now is really, really unstable, because I think it boils down to changes in population, changes in growth expectations, and our world is built on debt. And right now we have a vote of no confidence in France, but don't think it's just isolated to France, right? It's connected to we're all connected. We're all connected, especially this day and age. And put on top of that, say the social media stuff is where people can look out and they can see other people like, oh well, I just see that person on Instagram. They're wealthy. I can see them driving the Lambos, right? And so you start to feel angst, like your situation. Because imagine how different you would feel if you didn't know that like someone's driving a Lambo somewhere in the world and they seem to be having the best time of their life. But sometimes, and I could say oftentimes, stuff that you see on social media isn't necessarily real. So now we're lusting after stuff that's not real. And that's the world that we live in. And this is the part of the instability and why I say it's dangerous. I appreciate your time. I want to hear your thoughts from people around the world. What do you think about different governments collapsing? What do you think about my thesis of why it's an unstable time, and how our whole system seems to be in question and very dangerous? So thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you next video.